"100 hands, reverse the law. Phase 1 set, now put on pause. They claimed the grid could not endure and fed the myth of power pure. The fuel was buried, not the plan. It only waits for votes to stand."
Hello, welcome.
From all they stacked the vessels deep. Hands ran long though did not sleep. No shout was sung, no grave was raised. Just softer lights in western bays. A farmer passed through fields unclaimed. No one asked what wasn't named. Nuclear Belgium, hear the ground. Not a soul.
Always takes me a minute. My apologies.
Nuclear Belgium, soul that's clean. Ballots cast, the elites decree. Nuclear Belgium, built to last.
Alright, looks good.
They wrote it down in 23, then turned the page before the plea. The pause they pitched became a door, a lease renewed without a floor. The mask was spun in policy, but no one asked the river's fee. Nuclear Belgium, hear the ground. Not a soul to turn it down. Nuclear Belgium, soul that's clean. Ballots cast, the elites decree. Nuclear Belgium, built to last. But the river learns too fast. Now tell the child in Malta today what steams beneath the concrete base. Dessel's drums into me lie, and NATO carries what we weigh. The wind from Flanders bends its back. The scaffold stands, but none look back. Nuclear Belgium, hear the ground. Not a soul to turn it down. Nuclear Belgium, soul that's clean. Ballots casted, elites decree. Nuclear Belgium, built to last. But the river learns too fast.
That was great. I love that song. Just the whole presentation of it. And the footage is incredible. You can find more like that over at James Lucid's site on YouTube. James Lucid on YouTube. He's got over 300 songs. Anti-nuclear songs. That's quite, that's really something special, isn't it? Try wrapping your mind around this statement. Try wrapping your mind around this statement. A presidential candidate in South Korea has come out on TV and said that nuclear plants can withstand a Nagasaki bomb. Man. And so people have to come out and fact check it because that's as bonkers as you get. Now, Yoon, who's in jail for calling for, who never just called for martial law, but enacted martial law in South Korea. Just let me see if I can find that out of curiosity before I start the story. Because that's pretty special too, right? That story. We've covered at least 40 times, but We've done a lot of rearranging. And not looking good. I know it's right here somewhere, but I was hoping just to find it right away. We'll just get on with the show here. Oh, no. That's a pretty bold statement anyway. Oh, blah, blah, blah. There it is. Never disappointing, that story. Okay, we'll do that one in a minute. Let's talk about the last... Oh, that's sugar. Hang on. Yeah, in Japan, they... I just got to change this here, and then we can figure it out from there. The last presidential candidate, which was Yoon, had come out. Yeah, there he is. Okay, I'll bring that up. He said there was nothing got out of Fukushima. There was no meltdowns. And let's touch on this first. Sugar abandoned the peel of black rain. Hibakusha is the survivors of Nagasaki, Hiroshima. Might as well tell that story since we got it, because that's such a unique story. So 1945, this story was 2021. In 2021, the Japanese government decided to give the survivors healthcare coverage. Up to that point, they said there wasn't enough radiation to cause sickness. This was to protect the nuclear industry, clearly, right? In its ruling, the Hiroshima High Court said relief should be provided even if the plaintiffs did not have illnesses such as cancers, which is usually so it didn't matter, because you can have heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenal, everything else, but they wouldn't acknowledge it. They would only acknowledge cancer. So if you didn't have cancer, but you had all these other illnesses since Nagasaki, Hiroshima, they wouldn't cover you. The High Court also said if an individual is denied recognition as a survivor, it is the responsibility of the administration branch to explain why. The High Court also raised the prospect of including health problems of individuals who ingested radiation-contaminated water or food, rather than only those with external exposure. The exposures for Nagasaki, even today, are all based upon external exposure, not internal exposure. And Dr. Jerry Thomas, who we've covered too many times, is one of the lead authors in that stuff. The external, no internal. One high-ranking health ministry official said that if the standard was finalized and used as a precedent in other lawsuits, that the government's policy regarding compensations for Fukushima would be turned upside down, because the same policy was used for Fukushima victims, only external doses. And to suggest that you didn't breathe it in, and we've actually done entire presentations on the radioactive fallout. There is a lot of studies out there that quantified the radioactive fallout in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But the official policy of the Japanese government was there was only external doses and it wasn't enough. It was insufficient to cause health problems. And these people suffered for 74 years. Okay. I mean, Japan was basing its policy on Fukushima on the Nagasaki victims' studies, which were external. If that's not evil, what is the definition of evil? Well, there's another definition, actually, that we got, that we do in a poll. Should it be a crime to claim man-made radiation? Is like a banana and a potato chip and sunshine and climbing mountains and flying on an airplane, etc., like eating peanut butter or 15 minutes in a kayak. These are all completely nothing to do with man-made radiation, but that's what they've been using for the same time to deny you health care, to deny you compensation, to deny you, to set the policies in your schools, in your hospitals, in your communities. This is so monstrous that I can understand why the world don't comprehend it because of the brainwashing that has been going on. The SpongeBob, which brainwashed the kids in The Simpsons, and Spider-Man, and the Hulk, of course. These are all used by the nuclear industry worldwide to bludgeon your common sense, as your critical thinking skills as you're growing up. And it works. Clearly it works. And then, the first 3 years after Fukushima, the words bananas, potato chips, and sunshine were the common words. And I came out, and everybody that I've got a video of doing it, I chopped it out, and I came out and I literally bludgeoned them for saying it. And after about 3 or 4 years, it was pretty friggin' rare for anybody to use the words bananas, potato chips, or sunshine, even in news stories, papers, or anything else. Because there was just an uncontained anger that I had for people that done that. Because it was still the Wild West on the internet back then, right? And I wasn't very polite. I can tell you that much. I'm still not, I guess. You can argue that point, I suppose, too. So South Korea, 2021, president who's now in jail for sedition, sparked a controversy by denying there was a radiation leak in Fukushima nuclear disaster. He's in jail. I'm assuming he's still in custody, is he? And he was the president at the last year when he called for, not called for, but he enacted martial law because people wouldn't stop protesting. Has now claimed that there was basically no radiation leaks from Fukushima and the reactors didn't collapse. So the current president of the country, the genius, or presidential candidate, I should say, my apologies, is saying that they can survive a nuclear bomb. Now the medias and the politicians and the universities have cut your throat relentlessly since Fukushima and nuclear industry. But this is, I'm not going to play the video tonight, just to get the picture a bit clearer. These are just a handful of the media pretending that they're 150 feet above that reactor. Shouldn't they be in jail? Shouldn't they get the death penalty for doing something like this? Because you disarmed an entire planet. How the hell can the world sit in silence and not want these people held accountable? And how can you call them journalists? How can you look anybody in the fucking face after you call them journalists? Excuse the language. How can you look anybody in the face? Not you personally, folks. These people, right? Okay, so let's get to the next kooky story. It's the nuclear industry. It's always kooky. Can nuclear plants really withstand an atomic bomb? Do we really need to fact check something like that? Shouldn't we just come out and just denounce it for the ludicrousness that it is? No, we'll fact check it. Here we go. Reviewing a claim made by People Power Party candidate Kim Moon-soo during a debate regarding the safety of nuclear power plants. So they were talking about nuclear power plants, and he said they're so safe they can withstand a Nagasaki bomb. He's the presidential candidate. I'm not sure. I got a better picture of him right here, actually. So it'd be this guy over here there. Because you can't tell when you're looking sometimes, right? A monitor in the waiting area of the Seoul station plays a television debate between presidential contenders on May the 18th, 2 days ago. This is the 20th of May, 2025. Sometimes I don't mention it at the beginning of shows. And during a televised debate between the presidential candidates on Sunday, People Power, and I'll move the Geiger counter for a second, Party candidate Kim Moon-soo suggested nuclear plants are safe enough that even a nuclear bomb wouldn't affect them. He's going to be running your country soon. He's doing this to protect the nuclear industry. He's so stupid, he don't know nothing about nuclear, so he's just making this stuff up. It just shows you how sadistic and twisted and mentally ill the nuclear industry actually is. These people are mentally ill, right? I've been to a nuclear power plant and I've been to the Institute for Nuclear Safety. Congratulations. You're a nuclear scientist. And even if a small nuclear bomb, like the ones dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, is dropped in the vicinity of a contemporary nuclear power plant, the part of the reactor that would respond automatically to the explosion would not be damaged or malfunction, he said. That's a crazy statement. That is probably one of the craziest statements I've ever heard. He's probably going to get elected. They're going to love him. The nuclear industry loves him. Nuclear industry worldwide woke up to that cracker this morning. He graduated, this was the Wikipedia page, he graduated from Seoul National University in 1994. He got a degree. It took 25 years after he first enrolled. He was expelled twice for participating in student protest against the government. He was arrested and tortured by the dictatorial government in 1980, as if the current one's not a dictator. Look what they've done with the tritium propaganda story. But his indictment was later suspended. In 1986, he was arrested on charges of leading the Licheon City direct election constitutional amendment struggle as a member of the Seoul Confederation Labor Movement. Was tortured, sentenced to 2 years, 6 months in prison. During a televised debate between, I can't even wrap my mind around it. A televised on TV debate between presidential candidates. This was Sunday. Today's Tuesday here in Canada. I think they're 12 hours ahead. People Power Party candidate Kim Moon suggested nuclear power plants are safe enough. They can survive a bomb. His comments came up during the critique of the Democratic Party candidate Lee Ja-mong, who called nuclear power plants inherent. So the other guy who said nuclear power plants are inherently dangerous and unsustainable. Taiwan just closed down their last plant. Right, it just went offline 2 days ago or a day ago or something. And I mean, we'll cover that story's coming up. No nuclear regulator in the world, including international degenerate agencies, also known as IAEA, also known as UN, and the South Korea Nuclear Safety Security Commission, which is, how can they call themselves a Safety and Security Commission? How does that even work? Because they're denying Fukushima happened too, right? They said there was no radioactive fall at this particular administration, whereas the original administration told people to stay home, get rid of their clothes, because the radioactive plume was coming through. Had standards that dictate a nuclear power plant must be built to withstand a nuclear strike. Right, so you can't build a nuclear power plant to the standards that it's going to survive a nuclear strike. So the people that are, like, this is the mainstream media, they're in South Korea, they got to be careful how they frame the narrative. But you can be sure they stabbed you in the back on Fukushima in the last number of years relentlessly, like the rest of the media over there. Require nuclear plants to be immune to war and terrorism would make building them impossible. Should it be a crime, I know the poll tonight says, to claim man-made radiation is harmless and innocuous and benign, like bananas and potato chips and stuff. But shouldn't it be a crime to claim that a nuclear plant could survive a nuclear strike? Jeez. The propaganda is just, they're so confident with the propaganda that there's no lie too big to tell. And that's what the International Atomic Energy Agency tries to control all the stories, right? They write the nuclear stories. They give it to the journalist, and the journalist puts their name on it. The Fukushima nuclear plant, after one of its reactors melted down. Well, Reactor 3 and Reactor 1 is melted down in that picture. Reactor 4 and 2 still kind of looks like is in, they haven't blown up yet, but it looks of it. And they said only one, right? Telling a lie is just so natural for these people. If you checked every journalist out there for a month, and if they told more than 3 lies in a month, you would have to take away their degree. There wouldn't be one out there with a degree left. The common scenario discussed is if a Boeing 747 contained no gas crashed into a containment building, the reactor building, it could withstand it. But if the plane was full of fuel, the threat would grows immensely. The reactors wouldn't be able to withstand a missile strike, so how could it withstand a nuclear weapon? And so there's some interesting information came out of this story. Korean nuclear reactors are basically designed on the premise that there won't be any severe accidents. That is one of the most frightening statements imaginable. Give me a second. Yeah, there's something about that song I was playing there at the beginning, Nuclear Belgium, that strikes all the right chords, right, for penetration of the population. Right, it's a very melodic. James got a lot of music like that, by the way. Like when I sing a lot of songs like that, it's because I think it can be weaponized against the population, like The Simpsons has been, right, and Spider-Man and the Hulk and SpongeBob. Korea's not, except the other direction. Korea's nuclear reactors are basically designed on the premise that there won't be any severe accidents. That's so fucking, excuse the language, that is the most frightening thing conceivable. That's reassuring when you consider what the repercussions are. Korea faces a situation in which attempts to extend the operational lifespan of reactors aren't being authorized because there are no plans in place for responding to severe accidents. Well, ain't that interesting? Somebody got a conscience on this planet, nuclear industry? Kind of shocked me when I read that today. Presidential candidates on Sunday, People Power Party candidates, suggested nuclear plants are safe enough. Even a nuclear bomb won't affect them. Even if a nuclear bomb like the ones dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki is detonated in the vicinity of a contemporary nuclear power plant, the parts of the reactors that would respond automatically to the explosion would not be damaged. Na 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 na. Or malfunction. I should keep her, that fella right there. Well, we know why he's the presidential candidate of that particular party, don't we? Just give me a hand. I got to put that somewhere where I can find it again because I've got a feeling that's going to come in. We're going to need that one again. The next story is a fun story. So Canada just approved small modular reactors, boiling water reactor X300, right? Oh, here it is. All right, here we go. I got that saved somewhere where I can hopefully find it again. Ontario power emissions to rise 400% after Ford cancels hundreds of renewable projects. Here in Canada and Ontario, Doug Ford cancelled 760 wind and solar farms in Ontario so that they wouldn't interfere with the nuclear industry. 760 producers of solar and wind. Wrap your mind around, and a massive, major wind farm too. First, he came out with a bunch of rules saying you couldn't run them at nighttime. Right, because that's their enemy. Anything that can run in the dark, the nuclear for renewables, the nuclear industry is terrified of. So they said because migratory birds were coming through at nighttime, right? So therefore you couldn't run them because the birds couldn't see the big windmills. They can hear them though. So they cancelled, With all the renewable energy projects gone, the taxpayers are paying the price. The price of everything went up. And not only that, now they got nuclear. Now they're claiming they're going to build a small modular reactor. And the small modular reactors couldn't produce the power that these 760 renewable projects would have. And if they had to take storage, right, and put storage with this stuff, a lack of planning, we could have built up storage capacity to collect the surplus wind and solar and feed it back into the grid when it was needed. Yeah, exactly. And there was $5 billion allocated exactly for that. And guess who they gave it to? They gave it to Bruce Power. So Bruce Power built a water battery for $5 billion. Rather than let all of these have storage. Rather than let 760 wind and solar farms have storage, they took the money and gave it to the nuclear power plant because they closed every one of them before they announced the small modular reactors. Here we go. Hello, everybody. It takes a lot of effort to put these shows together and a lot of time and energy and everything, right? So I know lately I haven't been at my regular time, and I don't know if I'll ever go back to my regular time. It's quite a novelty because normally I do my shows at 10 p.m. and then they're over at 12 p.m. at nighttime. I do that as a courtesy so I got better quality without no background noises from the community. And, well, that's the main purpose, right? And so I'm used to doing my shows 10 p.m. at night, and then midnight the show's over. I'm tired, I'm burnt out. And so when I do my shows earlier, it gives me a couple of hours to wind down and go to bed. I'm sleeping better. I've been through a lot for the last couple of months, and it's only now that I'm starting to come around. And I'm going to digress for a second. We got a whole suspension, brand new suspension for the truck, right? I can't afford to buy a new one. And so I'm going to replace the whole suspension. I got all the parts. I'm just waiting because it's still winter down here. So I'm just waiting for a decent day. But I'm getting tired of waiting now. So that's a good sign too. Because normally I wouldn't give a shit if it was snowing or whatever. I just go out and do it. Because I got so much to do, right? Just get it out of the way. But it'll be done this weekend. I'll get it done this week. But I'm definitely not the Dana I used to be, right? My health is pretty rough. Well, it has been now for 35 years, right? But it's a lot harder now, I notice, to do anything for me. Just the basic stuff here in the house, or in the house. Reactor closures mark Taiwan's nuclear exit. This is an interesting, really important story, really. Taiwan's last operating reactor has been disconnected from the grid, will be decommissioned following the expiry of its 40-year operating license, in accordance with Taiwan's nuclear phase-out policy. Now, we covered this in 2018. There was a referendum, right, about bringing food in and opening up a plant that wasn't finished because of Fukushima. In July 2021, state-run Taiwan power company, Taipower, submitted an application to Atomic Energy Council to shut down the 2-unit Manshan plant. According to the existing legislation, the utility must file an application to decommission the unit at least 3 years prior to the energy production stoppage. Taiwan's Democratic Progressive Party was elected to government in 2016 with a policy of creating a nuclear-free Taiwan by 2025, 9 years later, right? Under this policy, the Taiwan's 6 operable power reactors would be decommissioned as their 40-year operating licenses expired. And so In North America, the original charters for the businesses, for nuclear power companies, was 30 years because of the Wigner effect of the material on the site and the reactor buildings, which are high pressure, over 1,000 pounds per square inch. And then the neutron bombardment from the chain reaction compromises the integrity of the metal of these high pressure facilities, right? So if you blow out your tire, imagine putting 100 pounds in your 35-pound tire. When it blows up, it's quite catastrophic, right? So imagine these big buildings at over 1,000 pounds per square inch, and they're brittle. Okay, so Canada, United States charters, which was the license for the site, were 30 years because they were very brittle. And Canada and the United States have been extending all their reactors. This is a very, very, very... You're taking a big chance because you only need one of these to screw up. And it's catastrophic for every species on the planet. And we're in real trouble because of Fukushima. 36 reactor cores in 8 fuel pools at the top of 4 buildings have been released into the environment. It's an extinction event in the research expeditions we've been doing for 6 years, plus now on the Atlantic Ocean. However, in a referendum held in November 2018, we covered that extensively, 6-7 days. Voters chose to abolish that amendment, and the Ministry of Economic Affairs says the amendment was officially removed from Electricity Industry Act on the 2nd of December. But nevertheless, the Ministry of Economic Affairs said in January 2019 there would be no extensions or restarts of the nuclear power plant. And the pro-nuclear community, after Fukushima in Taiwan, had over 2,000 students and nuclear plant workers and alumni and professors spammed the internet and challenged every narrative about Fukushima that was harmful and conflated it with bananas and potato chips and walking in the sunshine and climbing mountains. It's appalling. It's revolting. And that came out in 2018 during this highly contested referendum, where they piggybacked in shipping food in from the nuclear wasteland, Fukushima Prefecture in particular, and surrounding prefectures, that were banned by 55 countries for more than a decade. And this was done in the most deceptive and deceitful and dishonest ways. Michael Schellenberg here over in the United States was a big key player where he went down and supported the pro-nuclear community, and James Hansen, who won the equivalent of the Nobel Peace Prize in Taiwan, which was about $1.3 million, for promoting nuclear and saying that it was like a banana and flying on an airplane. The whole industry is just despicable. It's an unbelievable, like calling it, I'm being polite, right, rather than call it what it really is in a very graphic description. These are despicable people. And they're criminals. They should lose their degree. They should be in jail for 30, 40, 50 years. I gotta have super hot tea to cut my throat. It's very hard to get a host to help me on a show like this because, first off, I'm not going to tolerate anybody who can't articulate the issues, right? And what I mean by that is I'm going to have to correct them. It's not going to be nothing personal. They could be great people, but it's a big issue if I got to correct somebody over and over and over. That's a big issue, okay? Because that's what we're doing here. We're correcting people over and over and over. And it's going to be hard on them. Like I'm hard on these people. So, nevertheless, the Ministry of Economic Affairs, Chin, said in January 2019 that there would be no extensions or restarts of nuclear plants in Taiwan due to subjective and objective conditions as well as strong public objection. And it was really deceptive how they won that particular vote. Like I said, Michael Schellenberg, one of many, and James Hansen, who went to Taiwan, and then they got traction from international media as to get propaganda out there. Like, these people, they should get the death penalty for what they're doing. Everybody in the nuclear industry that's out there lying, it should be the death penalty. They're taking away the future of every human and every species. That's not warranty of the death penalty. What is, I wonder? And they know what they're doing. They know they're scumbags. They know it's evil, but that's the gig. And so to them, that's considered acceptable. I guess because their parents were scumbags and their parents were scumbags, and they have no common sense, right? No critical skills again. In the 40-year operating license for Kaohsiung 1 was due to expire on the 27th of December 2021 when it was due to be shut down. However, in May of that year, Thai Power announced it would only be able to operate the reactor until June because they didn't have a lack of storage in the unit's used fuel pool. Wrap your mind around that statement. The fuel pools, by the way, have the reactor cores, and each reactor core is splitting atoms for 1 million homes and businesses into your environment. How can you let that happen? How can we sit in silence and allow this to happen? Because that's what they've always done, and people are just incapable, right? You know, not the people that come here all the time, but the average person is incapable of comprehending the importance of it. You can explain it in great detail, they still can't wrap their mind around it. They're not able to concentrate for more than 30 seconds. And unfortunately, to appreciate the enormity of this, you have to be able to concentrate for more than 30 seconds. Chernobyl, this is Jim Smith from Portsmouth University. Again, if he didn't exist, this narrative wouldn't exist. If that university didn't put him on a pedestal to do something so evil, this evil couldn't exist. And if all the media didn't give him a platform, this evil couldn't exist. And that this is clearly evil, what we're talking about. Studies into this is not studies, this is just a single person. And they're going to gut me tonight, I wonder. 9 viewers, really, on a show I've been doing for over a decade. 12 likes, 13 votes. On a probably the most important topic in human history is this subject. Not probably, but is. Chernobyl, this world nuclear news, of course, the lowest forms of life, these people. They're a lobbying group, on top of that. Sample for the nuclear industry, like the IAEA, they're a lobbying group. They're in charge, they're the regulator, even though officially they're not regulators. They're the watchdogs, even though officially they're not a watchdog. And then they're the authorities. And they're going to cut, all they want to do is cut your throat. Their job is to come out and lie to you in a $5,000 suit. Maybe I should get a $5,000 suit, I suppose. Sampling is taking place across Chernobyl region after a research study suggested thousands of hectares of farmland suggested. This is not a fact, right? Because otherwise they would have been assertive. The thousands of hectares of farmland in the area outside the Chernobyl exclusion zone could safely return to agricultural use, even though it's abandoned. Right in TV and all the media goes there and he puts them on a pedestal and there's no dissenting voices. And that's the one thing about the nuclear industry. If there is a dissenting voice like Greenpeace, it's that controlled opposition, right? Which is Greenpeace. And Beyond Nuclear, that's controlled opposition. Following the Chernobyl event in 1986. I call it an event because you closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom, and you have almost 400 closed a day. You had 9,400 farms closed for almost 30 years. You closed all the freshwater fishery in Sweden for almost 30 years. Well, 30 years when they opened up again because of Fukushima, they said to hell with it. So how can the food be safe around Chernobyl when it's still not safe around Britain from Chernobyl, 3,000 kilometers away? How does that work, I wonder? You can read more about it in the World Nuclear Association's Chernobyl Accident Information Paper. Why would you do that? This is a pro-nuclear lobbying group, and they want you to read their version, which is disrespectful to the victims in every sense of that word. A 4,200 square kilometer Chernobyl exclusion zone was established, which has been largely uninhabited since. Like, if I take you through the health consequences for Europe about Chernobyl, and I can easily do it, and I should be doing it because Chernobyl anniversary is now come and gone again, and I still haven't responded with a proper presentation, which hasn't eluded me totally, but I keep forgetting for some reason, which has been largely uninhabited since. Yeah, well, there are people that are so impoverished, they went back to their homes. They have no way of living. They're too sick from the radiation poisoning to be able to hold a job. The nuclear industry doesn't have a single person there that comes across as a human like me and you, that breathes fucking air and drinks water. Excuse the language again. Let me try to zen myself out of this. It's hard not to be vocally opposed to this kind of evil. It's right, and you got all kinds of people, Dana. Keep your chin up, Dana. Put your chest out, Dana. Get your stomach, get your back straight, Dana. They want you to do all of these things because it suits them, right? But you got all these people coming at you. They want you to act a certain way, do a certain way. And that's not who I am. That's not what makes this work. The reason this works is because I'm Dana and I do things my way, which allows me to make this work. Right? You're messing with something that works. Once I start changing my ability, my whole approach, I'm no longer functional, right? The reason I'm functional is because I've been at this for 23 years, and my emotions are my words also, right? My actions are my words, in every sense of that. And I'm not doing this because it's fun. I'm not doing it because it's easy. I'm not doing it because I'm bored, okay? I'm burnt out. I've been at this forever, for a couple of decades. I'm burnt out with years and years of research expeditions. I'm burnt out from the failures of this industry never being held accountable. I'm traumatized by the damage that is done, and because I lived and wallowed in that excrement for many years in the research expeditions. And so, I'm barely surviving as it is on top of that, because the industry has managed to ostracize me. And I have a pension. The pension pays my bills. But this is an enormous responsibility to get out here and push the facts all the time. It's an enormous responsibility. And not one I take lightly, one I take deep to my soul. The study area focused on a part of a further 2,000 square kilometer area outside the exclusion zone called a zone of obligatory resettlement. These people are literally sadistic monsters to even suggest any of this. You literally got to be a monster, disconnected of any kind of humanity whatsoever. And this particular person that we're covering, the United Kingdom's University of Portsmouth, Jim Smith, Professor Jim Smith, he's a professor, man. Imagine what he's doing to his kids if he's willing to poison all these other kids. They focus on a 100-hectare site in the region of the outer area. The researchers say with proper monitoring and adherence to the Ukrainian food safety regulations, many crops can be safely grown in these previously restricted zones. This is nonsense. It's absurd to suggest that it's going to be safe. And why would you do it? What's the point? Because it takes a little bit less, because now the nuclear industry can say, well, Chernobyl's not too bad. They're growing food there legally, so it can't be too bad. And you'll see the Apologist will take that and use that to bludgeon opposition to being poisoned by this industry. That's all it's about. Professor Jim Smith from the University of Portsmouth should be losing his degree and should probably serve the remainder of his life in hard labor camps in Siberia. He should never be entitled to have a visitor come to see him. He shouldn't be ever allowed to receive mail. He should be literally locked up in a dungeon and left to mold and rot and fungus. These are despicable subhuman species. They have none of the human attributes that the average person has. They have no conscience whatsoever. They're doing it for an industry, right? They're committed to a monstrous industry. I'm committed to fighting for every species on this planet, every human. And I got no intentions of losing. And so I got a pretty big task ahead of me. The plan is to do it by education. Create a million little bastards just like me. Since 1986, there's been a lot of misinformation about radiation risk from Chernobyl. And this is Professor Jim Smith, the University of Portsmouth. A lot of misinformation, really. And he'll never have a debate with anybody that's able to articulate how wrong he is. And the media just regurgitates the blatant lies. We now have a validated science-based approach for bringing valuable farmland back into official production. So you're closing all the farms in North America and United Kingdom. You're driving the farm, you're beating the farmers up and taking them off the land, but you're worried you're promoting food from a nuclear wasteland. You parasite. You cowardly parasite. One of these days your students are going to haul your head right off your freaking soulless body. We now have a validated, disgusting parasite. You don't? While demonstrating safety for both consumers and workers. That's an interesting statement, by the way, because the previous studies that he produced were based only on it was safe for workers to grow food. It didn't mean the food was safe. It was about the worker being safe in a nuclear wasteland. And then they slowly worked their courage up now to say demonstrating safety for both the consumers and the workers. That's the first time I've heard them conflate the two of them. Saying the land can be safely used again despite contamination by radiocesium and radiostrontium. Again, when you hear that phrasing, that's typical United Kingdom phrasing. Radiocesium with an A. But just the word radio and cesium and radio and strontium, they're produced at the same time, right? One's a bone seeker and one's a muscle seeker. The cesium goes in your heart and your thyroid, and radiostrontium goes in your skeleton and mutates your stem cells. But they're not the longest living or the most prolific radioactive isotope from the nuclear fuel, which is curium isotopes. And curium isotopes, you need lead-shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium, which is named after the devil, and produces at least 3 different types of tumors in all the animals and humans. So when they're just talking about radiocesium, radiostrontium, that's outrageous misrepresentation of the facts. It's an outrageous, disgusting, untenable. They should be held accountable. Whatever his paper is, there should be thousands of people complaining to the journal that published it. Right? And these people are they can't withstand any facts. They're put up in the major media, and their lies are told to an unsuspecting population that is already damaged by Spider-Man and the Hulk and SpongeBob and the Simpsons propaganda and all the other propaganda they put out there over the years. The research findings were published in April in the State Agency of Ukraine for Exclusion Zone Management. The aim of the meeting heard was to ensure fair payment for victims. Really? Fair payment for victims. By creating millions of victims from eating the radioactive food. while also identifying cases where people who were not victims. Think about that statement. It's such an evil statement, that facet of the... And World Nuclear News, of course, which is a pro-nuclear lobbying group. That's a lobbying group. That's not media. That's just one of their facets of the lobbying group, is that they created a media which shows up in the very first page of Google for every story they put out. This nuclear outboard motor was a really terrible idea. The nuclear outboard motor. The podded atomic propulsion was leaky and noisy. It was an open loop system. So the radiation ran right out of the so-called motor. So if it was on a boat underwater, then it was spewing radiation wherever it was going. Like, so evil, man. General Electric and Pratt and Whitney. In the early 1960s, the lunatic Navy, U.S. Navy, could have gotten a disposable atomic-powered outboard motor. It's not really an outboard motor in the conventional sense of an outboard on the back of a boat. You put this in submarines and big ships. They would have made America's warships a hell of a lot more efficient, but there was a little problem of all the noise and the radiation. A little problem. The nuclear boat motor actually began life as an airplane propulsion, where it was an open loop system where wherever it flew, it would be spraying radiation out the back of it. Like, this industry is so evil for so long that it doesn't faze them. This should terrify you that any of this was even considered, let alone they produced it. General Electric and Pratt and Whitney actually produced these disease factories, and were trying to convince the militaries to take them. America's two great aircraft engine makers, General Electric, Pratt and Whitney, both had their fingers in this... both had their fingers in this particular radioactive pie. Pratt & Whitney tinkered with the closed-loop system in which the radioactive components were kept isolated from the exhaust. General Electric, however, opted for the easier-to-develop open-loop system, which led to nearly flight-ready hardware at the regrettable cost of highly radioactive jet exhaust. Highly radioactive jet exhaust. This is how sadistic this industry still is today. Nothing has changed in this industry. 1961, after spending nearly 15 years in $1 billion, which is equal to $7.7 billion today, the feds killed off the nuclear power aircraft program, but General Electric wasted no time looking for other uses for its design. So the airborne version was scuttled, and they used the same version they wanted to do for ships. In the section entitled Apex 910 Application Studies, you can read yourself General Electric's wacky proposal to put nuclear engines in a pod and bolt it onto ships. It blows my mind, actually. You see the little pods in the back of it? You can bolt it onto ships and submarines. The seawater surrounding the pod would act as a coolant and shielding, and radiation was spewed right into the ocean at the same time. If a malfunction demanded a shutdown or scuttling of the nuclear engine, the pod could simply be jettisoned into the ocean. Just right, they had explosives, I guess, on the bolts, and would just crack the bolts, and it would fall off, go down and melt down on the ocean floor. Right there, you see it. The engines are mounted onto a submarine. These are maniacs, man. Those people, their children are working there today, by the way, or grandchildren, weighing 12 tons, fueled with 250 pounds of uranium-235. It's crazy. So I'm assuming it was a plutonium mixed oxide fuel basic that they were using. It could produce 3,700 horsepower for 6 months, or over 6 months. A nuclear family vacation traveling in a world of atomic weaponry. Highly entertaining and deeply worrying. The mad world of the mutually assured destruction lives on. I guess, I'm not sure. I think that might be a book or something. Marin Katusa, changes at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission could unleash 200 nuclear reactors in the United States. Changes. So you just got to get rid of all the pesky checks and balances. Not that they got any. This is another fancy design, like the Canadian small modular reactor, which happens to be 240 feet tall, 24-story buildings. When they come out with the original designs, they were like a ice cream container flipped upside down and laid on the ground. But the reality of it was they're 24-story buildings. They're not even going to build an experimental one to see if it works. They're just going to build them because, that's pesky. We'll just build it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it works, it works. Within weeks, the White House is expected to announce a new set of executive orders that will effectively render the non-regulatory commission defunct, the non-nuclear regulatory commission defunct. They already are defunct. This is a really important story, this one, by the way. As you'll see in a second, I got to save this story in my oh shit pile too. I might as well do that while I'm thinking about it. Just bear with me. There we go. Until you get a load of this. Within weeks, the White House is expected to announce a new set of executive regulations that will render blah, 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 blah. The orders are expected to enable the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense to skip the non-regulatory commission, Nuclear Regulatory Commission's rules, and fast-track new nuclear plants. Wait for it. This is the most important news for the U.S. nuclear industry in the past 50 years. This is basically saying you don't even have to talk to us. Just go ahead and build your reactor. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll cover it up for you. Don't worry about it. The last reactor designed to be approved by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission cost $500 million, and required 12,000 pages of applications. I said, hey, wait a second, but then when you read the next sentence, 12,000 pages plus 2 million pages of supporting documentation. And so if you hire, typically what they do is they'll hire 300 or 400 people. So it was 400 people, that's 5,000 pages a day, or 5,000 pages for each person to get through. Try reading a book with 5,000 pages. Tease helping a little bit. So you're talking about 5,000 pages if you got 400 employees to check the application, which has 2,012,000 pages. And now I always lowballed it and said it was 1,000 pages, right? It's actually over 2 million supporting pages of documentation to quantify the reactor. So we don't need that no more. Don't need to hire 400 people to go through 5,000 pages each. And that's a 650-foot stack of paper. 650-foot tall, 65-story building, tall papers. 65-story building of papers. How do you coordinate that? See? So you're looking at a 3, 4, 5 year to take their paperwork and for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to be able to go through it and quantify their assertions, right? 2 million supporting documentation papers for their design. And when you're talking about new designs, you can't use the standard model. So that's 2 million papers that the non-regulatory commission has never seen before. And so they got to hire 300-400 people. They got to go through all of that paperwork. They got to coordinate everything. They got to build that picture of what the assertion is for the application for the license for the reactors. Just give me one moment here. How can my glasses get that dirty when I never touched them? And yet there's... It looked like a Sasquatch came in and ran over him. Okay, here we go. Just give me 1 second now. Alrighty. 2 million pieces of paper. $2 million pieces of paper. The original Nuclear Regulatory Commission licensing scheme was 50 pages long back in the day. That's how they got away with building the reactors that they built. Both Democrat and Republicans have nuclear energy development in their platforms, and Democrats see it as a necessity for achieving net zero and fighting climate change, which is caused by the nuclear industry. That's why we have so-called climate change. It's the self-inflicted climate change from the nuclear industry from unmitigated emissions. Let me explain it to you. There we go. Somewhere. That'll work. I shouldn't touch anything, but I did. Too late. Hang on. All of that stuff should have been right in one spot. I'm too smart for that. I gotta put it everywhere. Alright, we're getting somewhere now. Hang on. Excellent. One more. That'll work. Alright, here we go. Bear with me. I screwed that up, did it? I'm going to use this one. So radioactive fallout, like that model over there is 26 days, 27 days or something. Oh, I'm sorry. 25 days, say 25 days of radioactive fallout, basically. Say 30, I'm sorry, say 30 days in the bottom one. Covering the entire planet. All the models agree upon that particular type of model. And so, think of radioactive fallout. This one is based on 16 days. And it stops. So think of that as a snowstorm coming out of Japan. And after 16 days, the snowstorm covers the entire planet. The snow never stops coming out forever, for billions of years, and the snow never melts. Now, because you can see snow, right? So you can imagine that would be a big issue, right? But radiation does the exact same thing, and the radiation never goes away. So we've been releasing it for 80 years from 1,000 fuel pools currently. On top of that are still splitting an insidious. Each fuel pool is catastrophic to the entire planet. There's 1,000 of them out there. They're exterminating every species on the planet, and they're apparently, as far as I can tell, as far as the evidence shows, they're doing it on purpose, I should say. It's been a plan in the making for a long time. Almost every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farm. Every fuel pool will make an exact plume like that. Nuclear is the only emitter on the entire planet that makes plumes like this. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't only travel 50, 60, 100 kilometers in heavy wind. And it's carbon. So more carbon, more plants, more food, more trees, more insects, more puppies, more humans, more babies of every species, right? No carbon, we look like the moon. But man-made radiation has another insidious factor where each atom, and you can put 200 million on the head of a needle, but you can't see it, but each one will pulse energy at the speed of light every second. That's energy. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't pulse energy every second for billions of years. CC-137, for instance, which this model is, from the French government, pulses energy 600 feet every second. So think of an invisible snowstorm covering the entire planet. It never stops. The radioactive fallout never stops being produced, and it's produced at over 1,000. Just not talking about all the other dumping and nuclear meltdowns and everything else, but 1,000 fuel pools worldwide are creating plumes like this each. Every 20 days, there's 1,000 fuel pools will produce a plume just like that one right there. Just if they all started at the same time in 20 days, any of the fuel pools would be able to produce a plume just like that. So imagine 1,000 doing it. And imagine the fact that they're surrounded by farms, as far as you can see. It's hard. It's like it's blatantly clear after all these years of covering this stuff. I'm a very public person. I don't hide away from nobody. My phone number is there at the beginning of every show for any descending voices can call in. And if they're sincere and honest, I mean, all the better, right? If you want to have a debate, that's perfectly fine. But it's no good calling into my show and lying, because I'm going to expose the lie in a matter of a few seconds with the documentation, right? And there is, I'm not bragging on it, I'm just stating a fact. I'll provide the documentations most of the time, if not all the time, in most applications, for my assertions. Because it's an educational program. That's the only way you can educate anybody, is you've got to give them the documentation. That's the proper way to do it, and that's the moral and ethical thing to do. But it's also the hardest way to tell a story, right? And so each of my shows is an overwhelming amount of information. It's an overwhelming amount. And if I did make a Freudian slip, the other 500 pieces of information will probably correct that at some point during the program, right? But I'm very careful not to make even a Freudian slip. I'm very versed. And I don't talk about things I don't know nothing about. What's the point? It's an educational program. And my heart is broken because I've been doing this for so long and nobody else has picked up the baton and is bludgeoning opposition, right, with the facts. That breaks my heart every day. It is what it is. There's nothing I can do about it. And I have no problem dedicating every moment of my life to this reality to try to educate the policymakers, the investors, and everybody else. And I know I'm successful. There's no doubt about it. There is no nuclear renaissance because we, a small group of us, because this only works with me and you, it doesn't just work by me, because it's very difficult to do this show as often as I do it. On top of that, particularly with the censorship, the absurd amount of censorship you see on me, it makes it very difficult. But more difficult is to go outdoors and not see any migratory birds, to go on research expeditions and see no species. And so the few people that come to these shows and the few people that stand tall before the man alongside of me, you're very special people. The world will never forget you, folks. You most likely, if you didn't come along, this whole operation would have fell apart a long time ago, right? So give yourself a pat on the back. You were smart enough to understand there was something wrong. You sought it out and realized, unfortunately, that you were right. And then you stood the test of time. And very few can hold their heads up that high. Without nuclear power, there is no supply chain for nuclear weapons. So without nuclear disease factories / nuclear power plants, they're disease factories. They hemorrhage so much radiation every day that if you could see it, you would cry every day of your life and you would run away as far as you could, but you could never escape it. If you could see radiation, it would be the equivalent of being in a snowstorm all day, every day for your whole life. That's what it would look like if you could see it. And why are we doing this to our only planet? Why would you do this to your only planet? What? It's so heartbreaking. We need 200 more nuclear reactors by 2050, former U.S. Secretary of Energy Jennifer Granholm, and we covered her tons. She was revolting, pathetic parasite for the nuclear industry, right? First U.S. utility seeks permits for a small nuclear reactor. First U.S. utility seeks a permit for the Canadian design. They're going to use it's carbon free. Every time I see that, I want to kick the shit out of somebody in the nuclear industry. I'm not going to do it. I can't do it, okay? So don't be upset when I say it. If I was healthy, I would go do it. Make no mistake about it. But I'm not. I can't. So a project to build a first was terminated in 2023 which was NuScale, right? They have class action lawsuits against them because they didn't even try to build something. They just stole the billions of dollars people invested. It's a 100% scumbag industry. Every single person, you can't get a job in the industry, like in administrations and everything else, unless you're a complete degenerate pro-nuclear inbreed coward scum, right? Not that descriptive, I'm sorry. This month, the power company, there's nothing you can say good about the industry. There is not a single redeeming quality in anybody in this industry. It's such a bizarre industry that if the world was to wake up and appreciate the nuclear industry for what it was, there'd be mobs of people out there with baseball bats looking for everybody in the nuclear industry. There'd be at least 500 million people out there looking for baseball bats to go after people in the nuclear industry if they understood what this industry is doing and done and continues to do and plans to do. Just with the radioactive fallout, it's unconscionable what they're doing. There's no way to justify it. This month, the power company in Ontario, Canada, began building the first of 4 small modular reactors. They said small nuclear reactors. They didn't have the balls to call it a modular reactor. Ontario Power Generation chose the same reactor as TVA wants to build, and they don't even put the name of the reactor there. The boiling water reactor X 300. It's really interesting why they didn't put the name there. I done a whole presentation on it not that long ago. It's a 240-foot building. Let me bring it up. Let me find it. Yeah, we got lots of time there. All I can say, look, I'm doing the best I can, so if I show up earlier, there's nothing I can do. I'm doing it because otherwise there's not going to be a show, basically. I'm finally coming back around after being really sick for a couple of months. I was in pretty rough shape there for a couple of months. Hang on. I can't for the life of me remember. Did I put boiling water reactor? I wonder. See if it shows up. Oh, I did so. Look at that. No. Yeah. Put small modular reactor there. There we go. There we are. And they got to use plutonium mixed oxide fuel even to make that work. Well, New Brunswick chose a small modular nuclear reactor. That's not small at all. Consider a building that's sourced 35 meters upwards and 38 meters under the ground. 73 meters is 240 feet. Does that sound like a small modular reactor? Is anybody out there who says, oh, well, yeah, Dana, that's a small modular reactor. Duh, Dana. Mom, Dana doesn't even know a small modular reactor is 240 feet. Sorry. It's a 24-story building. Does that look like a small modular reactor? Does anybody really think they can put that in the back of a transport truck and ship it off to a mining company somewhere? These 24-story buildings. Does that look like a small modular reactor? Or am I just making a big stink over nothing? Because I'm known to do that too. Does that look like a small modular reactor? 24-story building? I just blown it out of proportion, maybe. It's a 240-foot building. How can you call that a small modular reactor? How does that freaking work? I jumped the shark there. Hang on. The Trump administration also supports building the administration, which is what, 6,000 people or something, also supports building small modular reactors. Oh, he did say modular. There's nothing modular about the SMW or SMRX 300 Hitachi's is 73-meter building. It's 50 feet taller than Fukushima. And it's going to be running on plutonium mixed oxide fuel, which is illegal in the United States, which is illegal in Canada. And they're not even going to have to submit 2 million pages to the non-nuclear regulatory commission. Because they're just going to say, do whatever you want. Just build it and we'll drop by and have a little boo here and there. Burnt out. So I'm glad though I done a stream today. Every day I do a stream. I'm very grateful. They get a stream in, they get a show in, they get a presentation out there. Put the documentation out there. Nano-nuclear partners with MIT for the molten salt research. They've already done it. The Rico Fermi plant melted down. Santa Susana melted down. The Moon-soo reactor in Japan melted down. These are molten salt reactors. And the molten salt reactors, you don't have any way of decommissioning them. If oxygen goes in, they'll detonate. If water goes in there, they'll detonate. They don't even, like the previous ones that all melted down, they didn't even build a way to decommission them. And MIT, of course, did we cover MIT? I think we did cover MIT there last week. Hang on. Blah, 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 blah. My God, did I really produce this much material? Wait, whoa, where? This is our 1000th video, folks. Is it? No. Is this 1000 or 999? Hang on. So when I put up my preamble, is it 9? Did it go to 999? Because I got that's 999 videos. My other site had 3,000, and they slowly chipped away at that. I had to take down 300 with a court order because they didn't like me talking about certain people. So is tomorrow night 1,000 video? I guess tomorrow night's 1,000 video because I think the preamble already counts. If not, I'm going to take down one of my videos, one of my short ones. So tomorrow night it'll be 1,000. We'll go 1,000 videos. If you see that tomorrow night, you know I kind of cheated a little bit, but for good intentions. So where's audit of Harvard University, audit of MIT. I done a 3-hour and 20-minute video 2 weeks ago where I took MIT's presentation on Fukushima from 2011, from that first month, and I went out and we audited it. It was about an hour long. It took me another 2 hours and 20 minutes to show you the lies, that because they can just tell you a lie. I have to show you the fact that it's a lie, right? I'm pretty fast at it too. There was a lot of lies. We've done the same thing with Stanford University 2 weeks ago, 11 days ago. And we audited Harvard University's response to Fukushima 13 days ago. That's 3 seriously important videos right there because it shows you the complicitness of the industry, right? Let's get after it. Let's finish this out. I think this is the last story. That doesn't mean I can still yak away for another 10, 20 minutes. I don't know if I will or not, but we'll see. Nano-nuclear partners with MIT. Now, we've done a presentation on MIT's response to Fukushima, and they were blatant, disgusting, parasitic liars. They were horrific. They were cruel. It was cruel, the lies they told. And we took our time and just meandered through it. And I challenged every lie they told, which sometimes was like 3 in a sentence. Try wrapping your mind around that time. Like you would have to stop a sentence 3 different times to explain the lie they just told, show you the documentation. Not just tell you. No, I'm not stupid enough to do it that easy. I got to bust my ass and tell you and show you the documentation every time. Because I'm cocky. I wonder, the industry must really hate me when you think about it, I suppose. I don't want to think about it that way, but they must really hate me for doing what I'm doing, eh? Because I tag them a lot of the times in the description. I'm censored heavily anyway, but the industry is here right now, trying to figure out how they can get rid of me. Announced the collaboration of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology to initiate a comprehensive irradiation testing program. These people, the universities, are the least trusted, and the media, but particularly the universities, the people you're supposed to be able to count on. When it comes to the nuclear, they're the ones that are going to come out and cut your throat every time. Particularly if there's an event, every professor is going to be called upon to come out and misrepresent what happened. And I think that is terrifying, that is even conceivable or possible, but actually that's what happens because we challenge those narratives, right? The company was seen a stock surge over 6% in the past year, which Nano-nuclear doesn't have a product. Nano-nuclear shouldn't be on the stock exchange. Nano-nuclear, what they're doing is they're buying up patents from companies like Ultra-Safe Nuclear that's gone bankrupt. Ultra-Safe. Remember those scumbags? They used to phone me up all the time and pretend they were anti-nuclear. And then at the end of it, they came out and came clean, and they made fun of me, right? As if that was supposed to demoralize me or something. Do they really think they're the only person to ever do that to me? I've been around forever. They do it all of them do it to you. The announcement is based on a press release statement from Nanonuclear. So this is the press release. No dissenting voices allowed. So if we don't come out and challenge their absurd propaganda, then nobody will ever do it, right? And so James had done a song last night on the bride's whale. And I'm assuming that was about a bride's whale that was just found dead on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada. Hang on, there's somewhere. Has never been seen before in British Columbia, Canada. And there's 3 whales in the last couple of weeks. And one of them are so two of them are so emaciated. One's a little, decaying a little bit, but it's horrifically emaciated. That was there's 2 gray whales, right? And a bride's whale in the last 3 weeks showed up in Vancouver Island in different stages or different parts of the Vancouver Island. One of them is really fresh looking, right? He showed up alive on the beach, and there's probably 25 stories about it, trying to blame it on climate change. They admit that they're starving to death. In one of the stories, from Fisheries, or Fisheries and Oceans in Canada said it. I got that screen captured last night because I heard that song. I was like, oh shit. I haven't checked in a few days, right? And about a week actually. I got a show ready to go on die-offs. I was tempted to do it today, but I got caught up in these stories. So anyway, one of them is completely peanut hit. Like holy shit stuff. So I got screen captures of that. This industry, like all the way back in 1953, this victim, he would have died that day. He's going to leave a shadow just like Nagasaki, Hiroshima. He has no concept, see? And this is unbelievable video. This is the cruelest thing conceivable. So he would have died within a few hours, or before the next morning he would have died. And the nuclear industry knew it. That is sickness beyond imagination. Those people should be in jail. That was murder. And they knew that was going to kill them. When you look at these pictures, this is why nuclear scientists don't go to Fukushima. You're not going to see nuclear scientists stood up here saying, it's like a banana on a potato chip and walking in the sunshine and flying, etc., 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 right? These are lethal doses we're talking about. But I mean, when you look, I'll just play the first guy. Hang on, here we go.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4.
Well, it used to be. Well, where they're, all of these, and there's many more besides, that are claiming they're 140 feet, 150 feet above the stump to your left, up in thin air. How is that acceptable? I mean, you really got to bring back burning people at the stake, and you got to bring back public executions to try to rein in the nuclear industry's insane madness that they were getting away with. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I apologize, I'm doing shows early, but I think that's the thing now. I haven't set a new time. I'm not capable of it. For me to sit there and wait another 2 hours to do the show, I just couldn't see it, which has been pretty regular for the last week or more, right? I'm just trying to keep everything going, and that's the way it's playing out. The video is there for people to watch. I like doing it at a set time because people are conditioned to it. No way, James got another song out, man. How good is that? Well, I stalled long enough. We got another song out there. That's a win. Make sure you give James Lucid, I'm going to show you his site, a subscription and start listening to some of his music, for goodness sakes. Oh, here we go. He's on YouTube. You'll see him in the comments most times. And you can link over to his site. And he's got that. That's one of my favorite pictures of me up right there. Bless your heart, James. You don't have to keep it there, James. I feel guilty sometimes. I don't mind it too much. I'm getting used to it. But that's one of his setups for making his music. He does all the video, all the art on the music. He's doing it with AI. So it's very resource intensive to pull that off. That was a little bit fast, was it? What's up with that? Oh, I'll get that in 2 seconds. Oh, that is the slowest I can do it. It's a pretty neat trick flying in like that, isn't it? Alright, so the Bride's Whale clearly was in response to the recent whale in a news cycle, which, like I said, there's 25, 30 stories last night when I looked it up. Deep Geological Repository is the latest song James just posted. If you're not familiar with his music, I recommend you listen. That was the one I played at the beginning, Nuclear Belgium. That was that song there. That Birdie Pop was crazy cool song, by the way. Nuclear Exceptionalism, that's a beautiful song. Hold Me Like a Spent Nuclear Fuel Rod. That's mad graphics too in that. The Enrichment Man is a it's an incredible song. I like all the other ones. I'm just being greedy and just pointing out ones that I'm significantly addicted to. It brings me happiness, this stuff. Alright, so I'm going to adjust the volume on my side. I can't possibly articulate how important this music is. Enough. You have to take my word for it. It's very important. I'm just going to make sure it's in 1080. It kind of always is, isn't it? But it gives me a chance. Because I have seen it a few times where it wasn't. Have a great night and a great day tomorrow. Hugs for everybody. And we'll see you. I would imagine I'll be back tomorrow night. That's the plan. Have a great night. Hugs for everybody. Take care now.
and does not forget. It only waits, and when it breaks open, it will not roar. It will call out the names they buried with the waste. Mark the so they will not be fooled by concrete.
And just for everybody's, I adjust the volumes sometimes a little bit high. That was my fault, not James. Take care, folks. See you tomorrow night now.